Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life. In the podcast, I explore cycling's global trends, community needs, and innovative business strategies. Today, I'm thrilled to chat with a truly inspirational figure in the cycling community, Kate Veronneau. Kate is at the forefront of promoting gender equality in cycling, playing a pivotal role in bringing the Tour de France Femmes, avec Zwift to the global stage. With a rich background that transitions from collegiate basketball to competitive cycling, Kate's journey is one of resilience, determination, and passion. As the director of women's strategy at Zwift, she champions women's cycling through advocacy and strategic partnerships, and is also deeply involved in creating initiatives that enhance visibility, inclusivity, and diversity in the sport. Her work with Zwift to create equal opportunities for women cyclists has been groundbreaking. From driving Zwift's title sponsorship of the Tour de France Femmes to fostering global communities that support female cyclists, Kate's influence is reshaping the landscape of professional cycling. Join me in learning about Kate's inspiring journey, her vision for the future of women's cycling, and how she's closing the gap towards gender parity in the sport she loves. But before we get into the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to subscribe, follow, give us a review, wherever you listen to. It helps me grow the podcast massively, and I'll be forever grateful. Now, back to the podcast. Welcome, Kate, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Brilliant. I've been following your work and your journey, and you are inspiring the next generation of women cyclists. And I wanted to start our conversation by picking on something that you said on another podcast, funnily enough, a very good one called Femmes Cyclists. And you said in that interview, bikes are a tool for liberation. And I think this needs to be reshared, needs to be talked about, because it speaks about the struggles that women have faced and still continue to face in society at large, in the sport, and more specifically in cycling.
Yes.
And there's so much to be unpacked from this quote, from what you said. And I wanted to kind of explore a little bit about your journey, because that perhaps will give us a little bit of insight into how this quote is also relevant to you. So can you please share your journey into cycling and the transition from basketball into competitive cycling and to professional cycling, and what were the unique challenges of that transition?
Good. Yeah, so I started out as a basketball player. I come from a family of very tall, very passionate basketball players. And I played in college. I really enjoyed it. It was my world. I played, year round. And when I was in college, I ended up having a couple knee surgeries, and it cut my career a little bit short. I had a couple great years in college, and then it was sort of done. And after so long of
you were still a very
go ahead.
Sorry, you were still a very good basketball player, from what I understand.
I was all right. I could definitely hold my own. I'm 6 feet tall, but I like to dribble and shoot, and I was a pretty flexible player. And I worked hard at it. I loved it so much. I enjoy practicing. I've always enjoyed exercising. And I come from like a family that was just sort of part of our life, very much part of our daily life. Two older brothers, always playing sports, and then really got into basketball. And then when that got cut short, I was a bit lost. I had spent so much time focused on basketball and focused on practice and thinking about, can I play overseas after college, and what my basketball future held for me. And when that was cut short, I struggled to kind of figure out what was next for me. I needed a competitive outlet. I just still love to work out. And I ended up starting to ride bikes a little bit, just kind of for fun at first with like a fixie bike, riding around the city, more urban city cycling. And then I started doing longer and longer bike rides. I really just enjoyed getting outside and the fresh air. And I love the pace of a bike, the way that you can
Yeah.
see so much in a couple hours. And you could really push yourself, but you could also be leisurely. You could be utilitarian about it. There were so many ways to use a bike. And I was getting
Yeah,
really into it, just
definitely. Yes.
really enjoying it. My husband also into bikes, and he really loves like the mechanical side of it, and building the bikes, and he now paints bikes, and got really into bikes. And somebody invited us to watch a bike race in Philadelphia. And at the time, this was the Philly bike race. It was one of the biggest bike races in the country, but I didn't know that. And I'm watching the race, and I see a giant pack of men go by, and it's super exciting. And then like 10 minutes later, a pack of women rode by, and I had never seen women race bikes up until that point. And I was in my late 20s. I was just blown away by it. I thought it was so cool. Next thing I know, I'm working harder and harder on my bike. I signed up for some amateur races. I had a little bit of a knack for it. I had a pretty good engine, so I just kept
Yeah.
going. And next thing you know, about 3 years later, I was racing that race, and I raced domestic pro in the U.S. For a really fun team called the Fearless Femmes, which is kind of funny given what I'm doing now. And that was
Yeah.
just a great way to, yeah, it was a great way to chase another dream of being, a pro athlete. And I was like, I want to be a pro cyclist. But when I did get to that domestic pro level, I can't say that it was a lot of opportunity. There was not a ton of
Yeah.
racing in the US, very hard to get seen, to get over to Europe for the real shot at, the big pro contracts.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I ended up giving it up fairly soon after I started. I raced for a few years, and then got working in the industry because I wanted to see. I really enjoyed bikes. I knew I wanted them to be a part of my life, so that's when I transitioned to working in cycling.
And that's, I guess, speaks volumes to the experience of many women before you and after
Yep,
you that have had similar struggles with, well, making a professional career out of cycling.
exactly.
So throughout your career, I'll kind of let's just condense here a little bit the journey. You have sort of walked, like, as you, in your words, I think is fair to say, you zigzagged, or in a very
Hmm.
sinuous path, you got to where you are now as director of women's strategy at Zwift.
Correct.
And and I wanted to understand, like, from your experience back not long ago, racing professionally, to what you see now. Do you think the barriers to women cycling have started to dissolve? Have started to is more approachable, is more inclusive from when you were a professional athlete?
Yeah, I think the increased visibility the last few years has enabled more investment to come into the sport, and more fans to be made, more supporters out there of women's cycling, more women getting inspired to chase their bike dreams. So I do think that
Yeah,
it's there. There's more information out there. There's more support out there, but we still have a ways to go. The industry has a long ways to go. The race scene domestically, internationally, it's getting there.
hmm,
We've made some big steps, but there's still a lot of work to be done to ensure that we're creating spaces that make it comfortable for women to get on bikes and to feel supported, to feel safe, to have the resources that they need to explore racing or explore gravel riding or figure out what they might want to do on a bike, because there's a lot of ways to enjoy it. And it's still
yeah.
quite an intimidating sport. So between the industry, between
Mm.
shops and communities, platforms like ours, we can all do a lot more to create these spaces that make cycling more accessible and inclusive for women.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. There is still a lot of work to be done by brands, by media in general, to make that space more inclusive and more welcoming. Obviously, you have a pivotal role to play in making women feel more welcome into the sport of cycling. Can you just share what has been your experience working at Zwift and the journey from where you started to where you are
Sure.
now, and kind of what doors have you been opening?
Yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. I first came to Zwift because I had befriended some of the early founders of Zwift, and we were friends on the bike. We were riding bikes together. And one of the founders, I was talking to him one day, and he says, "We've got this idea. We're going to host a global talent ID competition in Zwift to win a pro contract. And we're going to do it with a women's team." And I was like, wait, what? Hold on. You're going to use your virtual platform and you're going to go find the next great women's bike, talent? Like that's kind of crazy. But I just love the outside of the box thinking. What else could you do with this platform? How could you, make it easier for women to not only show what they can do from a sense of like performance and talent ID, but also find other friends to ride with and, discover, workouts and discover like racing in a much more safer and social kind of entry level. So it was really exciting to me the way that Zwift was approaching creating, a virtual space where, you could overcome some of the barriers that women face on the outside. So we started with that Zwift
Yeah,
Academy
for sure.
program. Yeah. And it was in partnership with Canyon SRAM Racing. And we created a new pathway to the pros for women. I mean, that was one of the struggles when I was racing is just being seen, you could have an incredible engine, but if you didn't win the right race at the right moment, you're not going to, have that opportunity to be seen
Yeah.
by the right scouts or team directors or to have that unlock that next opportunity for you. So it was exciting to think that we could create a global women's cycling community and we could create ways for them to race. We could create ways for team scouts to see what they're capable of. We could host complete parity in racing because we literally built our own world. So we made the rules. So when we started racing in Zwift,
Exactly. Yeah.
100% parity across the board. And that's just something that was a no-brainer. I mean, why we have no excuse to do it any differently. It's literally our world. So it was really exciting to see early on teams like Canyon SRAM Racing, Team 2024, a wonderful US development team. They actually go by Virginia Blue Ridge Mountain Team 2024 now. They adopted to Zwift early on because they did see an opportunity to ride together, to compete
Exactly.
in esports, to host community rides, to build fans, to connect with sponsors, to connect their riders who were in different places all around the globe. So it was exciting just to think about what you could do in Zwift that wasn't currently being done that well on the outside, or there was different obstacles too. So in our virtual world, it was pretty cool that we could do things differently.
Yeah, exactly. You like start from a clean slate,
Yeah.
and you mentioned you meeting through riding with some of the founding team of Zwift. You had
Hmm.
kind of sharing these ideas, and sometimes actually is when someone tells you an idea that you think, well, that's a bit crazy. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
possible. Those are the ones that sometimes
Those are the
work
ones.
very well.
Now I know that if something makes me a
But
little uncomfortable, that's probably a good thing. I like that kind of little bit of, it has to
yes,
have a little bit of risk. You have to be trying something. If you don't take any risk, how are you doing things differently?
precisely. That's a very good point to take because yeah, there's risks to be taken. Not risks to be taken. Let me rephrase this. If you don't take risks and you take and move yourself out of your comfort zone, then there is no development to be made. You're just
Yeah.
stagnant, and that's kind of, I guess that's a lesson perhaps to people listening and to brands even listening about
Yes.
the investment that needs to be made in women's cycling.
Yep.
Um, I wanted to also to touch upon the community aspect of Zwift because you mentioned, and not long ago I had Ashley Molman Passy on the podcast, and she was talking about the powerful tool that is Zwift as a game where you don't have to be subjected to any restrictions, is inclusive, he welcomes and is safe space to interact and ride, meet people. And one of the people that is part of our Roca Corba collective, one of the members said, "My avatar has no shame," and that, I mean, that kind of pinpoints the importance of what Zwift is creating. Is the opportunity for women, non-binary, anyone that can come to the platform and connect with like-minded people and just share their excitement, their joy in cycling
Yes,
together and building bridges, so to speak.
that makes me so
It's
happy.
how is community? How do you make the community aspect more significant for a person coming into Zwift? What are the platforms, the strategies that you're implementing so that you nurture these communities that are building through coming onto Zwift and riding together?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that we try to build community. One is our club functionality, the ability to build your own social club, race club, training club, brand club, whatever you'd like. Just like on Strava, you can build a club and connect cyclists all around the world under a theme. Maybe it's a women's race team, maybe it's international travelers, people that want to take their bike and explore the world, and they're training together on Zwift. Maybe it's a real life race team that has a esports team. There's so many ways. We have a dirt club, dads indoors riding trainers. There's so many ways that people connect on the platform.
I've done a few rides on that
They're
club.
great rides. Yeah. We have the herd. We have the Aussie Hump Day ride. Incredible communities that use the platform any way that they want to grow community. And some of them just host really great regular social rides that are very friendly to beginners. Others really help people that want to get into racing for the first time. So there's something for everybody on Zwift, and it's about creating the events, creating the clubs, creating the social connection on the platform, even the ability to chat to each other, to use Discord to talk while you're riding, to make it more than just working out, to make it connecting with other cyclists around the world in real time. That's a really beautiful thing. So I've loved to see how the community has kind of self-served to grow and to come together under different themes and events and goals. And it's been a beautiful thing, and something I believe that really sets us apart from the competition as well is our giant global community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. That's a massive differentiator in how perhaps you compare with other platforms. So building on the aspect of community, I wanted to just touch on kind of on how the lack of diversity, representation, and inclusivity affects the sport of cycling. Can you just expand a bit more about what Zwift with the platform, but also with the partnerships that you have established is addressing the needs of the women cycling community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we all know that cycling has historically been a very male-dominated sport, from the opportunities in racing to the communities that form around cycling, and the amount of sort of women-supported rides or spaces in the real world. We've taken it upon ourselves to have a mission to make cycling more accessible and more inclusive for women, especially, but honestly for everybody. We've taken a special interest in women because of the Zwift Academy program, and recognizing we had an opportunity to create more race opportunities and race sponsorships and different things that we've done on the women's side of things. But in general, on our platform, we want everybody to experience the joy of a bike and to feel like they can find other like-minded individuals that they can they can select an avatar that represents them. They can find a community that shares, similar outlook or nationality or interests as them. So there's a lot of ways that we can kind of, make spaces that make people feel more invited into the sport. It's been wonderful to see our women's community grow, because I hear all the time that women don't have other women to ride with in their local town, their city,
Yeah.
or their bike shop is not that inviting, or there's
Hmm.
no race teams around. And now they can join a race team in Zwift, or they can do Tuesday and Thursday workouts in the Zwift Women's Training Club with hundreds of women from around the world. They can ask questions in different social forums on Zwift and help get those answers that we all have as early cyclists. It's an intimidating sport. There's a lot of things that you have to learn. There's
Yeah.
gear you have to have. There's decisions you have to make. How much are you supposed to ride? How
Hmm.
hard are you supposed to ride? There's so many questions early on in cycling. So the more that we can create spaces where people can share resources and they can answer each other's questions, support each other in their journey, find what they enjoy most about a bike, and challenge themselves in a way that is less intimidating than on the outside. Showing up to your first bike race on the outside is a pretty big step. And I've heard a lot of women, especially for the first time, raced in Zwift because you didn't have to worry about crashing. You didn't have to worry about bumping somebody or breaking your bike or not knowing what to do. You just show up and you go hard and you follow along. And I've heard so many women get the confidence to then try a race outside. And so it's nice that we can create a place where people feel comfortable and invited into the sport, especially at those early stages. And then there's also just the time constraint of bikes. It's not everybody has a lot of
Of
time during the
course. Yeah.
week to get out for the 2-hour ride, or has really good roads right around them that they can get an hour workout in. So the idea that you can also be hyper efficient, and working out before or after work or midday or while the kids are next to you, there's, a lot of efficiency there as well. So a lot of convenience.
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. You said something that kind of wanted to touch on, is that the fact that women sometimes have to travel. They have clubs that are near to them, but they don't feel that they can go to those clubs to ride because probably the predominant representation is male riders. So they go and drive long distances, 1 hour or more, to ride with women.
Yeah.
But with Zwift, you kind of break that down. You break that barrier. So you immediately have access to women-specific, women-only rides, for instance. So that's a very good aspect. And you also mentioned about the racing aspect, and then I wanted to bring the conversation now to the racing side of it, because obviously Zwift has been a presenting partner of Paris-Roubaix Femmes, avec Zwift. Correct me if I'm wrong. And now,
Perfect.
and you also are the presenting partner of the Tour de France Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift.
Perfect.
And these are one one is the biggest race in the world, the Tour de France Femmes, and the other one, Paris-Roubaix Femmes, is one of the toughest in the world. So it's two iconic races
Yes.
that you have partnered with to give more visibility to women cycling and to grow women
Yes.
cycling as well. So I wanted to kind of touch on that because it's a very relevant point, and how you are supporting women cycling. What are your hopes for how women cycling, professional women cyclists, will grow and will continue to their visibility, their profiles, the sport in general will continue to grow. That's obviously the ambition of Zwift. But how do you see? What do you have a strategic vision for? Where do you want to see women cycling in, well, let's say in 2 years, 3 years time?
Yeah. I believe it's going in that direction pretty quickly. It's been so exciting to see in our 2 years of sponsoring Paris-Roubaix, Femmes, avec Zwift, and Tour de France, Femmes, avec Zwift, what putting women on these stages means to the sport and unlocking incredible global visibility that now gets the fans and sponsors much more interested in the sport because we're really growing the value of the sport. The races themselves have been absolutely incredible, like just, nail biting, so exciting, new breakout performances, heroic stages, everything that you'd want at Paris-Roubaix and at Tour de France, we're seeing on the women's side. And, for those of us that have been longtime fans of women's cycling, we've known it's there. The characters, the action, the talent, those breakout performances, but nobody was able to see it. And we had an opportunity to come on board and just to commit to a 5-year sponsorship of these races to ensure that we were, investing for the long term and really building a sustainable future for the sport, because you need that visibility to attract new audiences, new fans, new investment, to be able to allow these women to be superstars, to be professional, where they don't have to have another job, because they can rely on the salary that they make, because we're literally increasing their value as to sponsors, because they're so much more visible than they once were. So it's pretty exciting to see how much the sport has grown in just the last couple of years in terms of riders' salaries, in terms of new sponsors coming to the sport, in terms of the amount of races that you can watch in a year now, and just more coverage. And that's what's going to be the key to unlocking the future of cycling is, little girls being able to see it, sponsors being feeling really excited about investing in it, and giving the world the opportunity to be fans of these incredible superstars and to get to know the characters and the personalities, all these things that have worked for the last 100 years for men's cycling. We're finally giving women the opportunity to shine on those world stages and to be seen at that level. So for us, it's been really wonderful to see how the sport has changed in the last couple of years, and just the new opportunities coming into it, the depth of the peloton. Like I said, riders' salaries going up, social media followings growing, teams and riders becoming more household names. It's been really great. And it's not magic. It's really just giving, the world the opportunity to see and to support. And now we're going to be inspiring that next generation too.
Exactly. Are you giving I guess you are creating, well, I don't know, I might be mistaken here, but you have definitely created a blueprint to how brands can see the return on the investment. I've seen, being a marketer myself, I couldn't help myself but look at your report and looking at the growth of the women's teams profiles and the athletes profiles, and just like through over the Tour de France, is like a peak, not a peak, sorry, like a massive jump in their in the attention and the reach they have received, and that is just like in great part to the investment that you have made in building it up and supporting these races. I wanted to talk about the role of brand investment in women's cycling, and to kind of maybe bring the two questions into one, which is, you obviously, Zwift has been very active in the involvement at the top tier of the sport, and you have mentioned that now through the work that you've been doing and the helping grow the sport through the visibility that you're giving them, and creating kind of a long-term plan, kind of the salaries have increased, and there is not so much of a discrepancy between like second tier teams and first tier teams. But there is a question I want to ask. Sorry, this is a long-winded way of getting to the point. But the question I wanted to ask is, you have been working at the top tier of the sport, and what about the low tiers? What about the grassroots? Is because the brands, you like I said, you created a blueprint for brands to invest the top tier of the sport. Do you see? I'm sure you see, but is there an opportunity for grassroots, lower tier level of the women's cycling, and how brands can see better perhaps the growth in women's cycling? Sorry, I didn't. Let me rephrase this into
Sure.
pack this up into a question. So it's how important is the brand investment in women's cycling at lower levels of the sport?
It's very important. We hope with the rising profile of, big races like Paris-Roubaix, Femmes, avec, Zwift, and Tour de France, Femmes, avec, Zwift, that we're creating more interest in the sport, more participation globally, and that's going to need support at all levels. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for brands to get into support on a grassroots level, for more races to pop up, and more development teams to pop up. And of course, as more money comes into the sport, it's going to trickle down and to help, support women, as they're getting into the sport, and create more opportunities on, development teams and community teams. So I think the smart brands are getting behind that and recognizing that that's also your consumer, So, by giving the sport the visibility of these major races, we know that that's contributing to more women getting on bikes. And I think that that's all the sponsors of the Tour de France, Femmes, avec, Zwift, and other races, are looking to do is truly grow the sport.
You mentioned there's a very key brands that are alongside Zwift are investing heavily in women's cycling. To name one, Rafa, for instance. And actually, I wanted to ask you this because it is, I think it's coming from you is quite relevant. What message would you give to brands that have not yet invested or are giving the right visibility to women's cycling?
Oh, I think it is a wonderful growth opportunity. Women make wonderful marketers for your brand. They are wonderful ambassadors for the sport. They're more inclined to share their love of something if they are getting into cycling and really enjoying it. They're going to be all over social media and sharing rides on Strava and connecting and bringing more women into the sport. So it's going to grow at an exponential rate. And we're definitely seeing that at Zwift that women's growth is a priority for us because we see it as the biggest market potential right now. There's a lot of room in that market to grow, and there's a lot of needs on the women's side of things that you can come in and, design for women, create spaces for women, clothing for women, that it's a great market to pay close attention to right now. Women, have most of the purchasing power of a household too. So they're making those consumer decisions as well. So you definitely want to be ensuring that you're reaching them and that you're designing for them and that you have them in mind as your consumer, because they're a very powerful economic force.
Yeah, so I guess you leave us with a call to action. But very, very important message, because that's, that message sometimes doesn't get through to brands, and well, I won't elaborate here the reasons, because I'm not in the know of why brands are not more active in women's cycling. But what you just said, it's pinpoints the fact that you, through building towards gender parity within the sport, you are growing the share of the market. You are growing the next role models and creating opportunities for young girls that can see a clear path
Yes.
towards the top tier of the sport. I think to give an example, actually, through my research, you mentioned as well that once you were a basketball player, you could see exactly the steps that you needed to take to to become a top tier player playing at national level.
Yep.
And with the cycling, perhaps I don't want to put words into anyone here, but perhaps that was not so clear cut. They
No.
were perhaps not quite clear. So building up from what you said, I mentioned that I looked at the stats from the reports of 2022. Are you able to give a glimpse into what are the stats of the impact of the partnerships of Zwift partnerships on
Mhm.
the biggest races in the world and one of the toughest races in the world?
Yeah, so let's see. For the Tour de France Femmes, avec last year, it was broadcast in 190 countries with 105 hours viewed. That's pretty astounding. So the social media accounts for the race grew almost 800%. So very exciting to
Oh,
see so many more people becoming fans and engaging with the race and
yeah.
being excited by the different content. I mean, the moments of the race with 8 stages of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, each stage is
Mhm.
almost like a classic. It's so exciting. And last year we had 8 different winners. So you can imagine then with each team, that takes that top podium spot and all the coverage and engagement that that team is getting and those sponsors are
Exactly. Yeah.
getting. That's what I mean. To me, that was a dream for the race, is to have so many different brands see themselves on the podium and so many different teams experience the joy and the exposure and the visibility of winning a stage at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. I mean, these things can change the sponsor game going into the next year. So it's really exciting that the race happens in August and then teams are going out and re-signing sponsors and signing new sponsors for the next year based on
Yeah.
the incredible exposure of the race. So one of the things that I wasn't sure about was whether fans were going to
Mm.
come out on the side of the road like they do for the men's tour. It's 3 weeks the men's tour and we know, it can be half a
Yeah.
million fans lining the course every day. And that was one of the things that was the most heartwarming to me, was to see so many people crowd the starts and the finishes and stand outside the team buses waiting to catch a glimpse of Lada Kopecky or Demi Vollering or Kasia Niewedoma. It was so thrilling to see
Yeah.
the passion of the fans. And there was a sense that it was really magical on the ground because you could feel the sport changing. You'd never seen a scene like this. And I give credit so much to the women that raced the tour in the 80s without the kind of exposure
Yeah.
that this
Wow.
tour is
Exactly. Yeah.
getting, and the women that worked so hard to get La Course off the ground in 2014. There's so many people that came before us that paved this path for this moment to now happen. And I'm so appreciative, and to know that the fans are here for it and that they keep coming back, they keep tuning in. That was so exciting to see. Last year, the Women's Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift happened at the same time as the World Cup in football, the Women's World Cup. And we were all concerned
Yeah.
about the impact of that. But
Of course.
it was fantastic. Like, the race held the ratings from the first year, which were off the charts and blew everybody's expectations away. So I can stand here and say, as a title sponsor, this is a great investment, and I want more brands to get behind it. I want them to really recognize the power of women cyclists as brand ambassadors and as representation for the sport, and how engaging and exciting they are to fans. So I get really excited about women's cycling, not trying to, do what men's cycling is doing, but but actually doing things a bit differently and bringing new fans to the sport. Women's racing is a little different than men's. It's aggressive, and it's
exactly.
the slightly shorter format means that you can't miss a second. Like, it's incredibly exciting.
It's more
racing.
unpredictable. Yes,
It's unpredictable. So when you sit down to watch a race and you just don't know what's going to happen that day, where, on the men's side of things, it sometimes can get a little bit formulaic, it's, there's so much, marginal gains, and the teams can, it's still of course thrilling, but it's exciting to see new characters and new action come to the table, because that maybe can attract a different kind of modern audience to the sport. So it's been really wonderful.
I think it does. I think it does.
Yep.
I think it does. It's the having media coverage of women's race, it reaches so much more fans, so much more people that wouldn't even necessarily know about women racing.
Just in general,
so
the social media around the race is so positive. There's so much positivity. The men's side, of course, it's, there's a lot of naysayers, and there's a lot of people trying to, everybody has a comment on something, but there's something that's very overwhelmingly positive about the women's engagement in social media. And it's exciting to see the women racers, attract sponsors from outside the sport as well, or to be on the cover of Women's Health magazine, or, win major sporting awards outside of cycling, just because they're luminous personalities, and something that audiences are really responding to in a new way.
Yeah, well, it speaks to the fact that you're introducing new role models. The society can see women in a different sport that they wouldn't probably associate with or have reference to, and that's kind of, that brings me to the next point, which is, we've been talking about the athlete, the sport, but I'm also interested in, because you have a role to play as well in women working in the cycling industry. You have been involved in the Uplift program, mentorship program, and I wanted to, well, on your own words, just give you a brief overview of what is Uplift Mentorship program, and also share for women listening to this podcast, what advice would you give to women wanting to work in the cycling industry?
Wonderful. So, I can't believe I've now been in cycling for 20 years. And now I have a lot of experience that I want to share. And I didn't have that mentor when I came into the sport, because there weren't that many women in charge. And so the Uplift program comes from the recognition that as more women are invited to the table and take on more leadership and strategic positions within the sport, we're going to help broaden the sport. And that's it's going to take to help, achieve more parity within the sport and more opportunity for women working in the industry, for women getting into the sport and feeling supported by different brands. And we've seen a lot more women now in the past decade really rise up within different brands. And this wonderful woman, Rachel Burnside, with Shift Media in the UK, had this idea that, well, maybe we can create a program where we can pair mentors and mentees to help pass along some really valuable insights and information that have been in the industry for a long time, that we now hold, and that we would love to share with that new generation coming into the sport, to help support them, to help elevate them, to help them avoid some of the pitfalls and obstacles and barriers that maybe we faced in the program, within our career trajectory. So it's been a wonderful program. We opened it up in the fall to applications for, who's in the sport that would like to be paired with a mentor. And Rachel got hundreds of applications. And we had 12 mentors at the time, and we were all paired up with a mentee, if not two mentees, actually. And we did a couple kind of sessions with them to share our experience in the industry and to offer insights and to
Yeah,
offer guidance and, a wall to sort of bounce things off of. And
exactly. Yeah.
it's been wonderful. And it's been so
Hmm.
successful that we are now doing a second round of it. Rachel has also hosted various live events, panels, connecting social events where women can show up and meet other women in the industry, ask questions, hear stories, hear experience, and it's going to enrich, their personal journey in the sport and keep them in the industry. This was born out of a
Exactly. Yeah.
report that came out that like 73% of women working in the industry were considering leaving. And I've had that consideration. I've hit
Yes, I
walls
read
in
that
my
too.
career
Mm.
where I didn't know, I didn't see the next step, or I didn't feel supported, from leadership or seen by leadership or invited to the right conversations. And then once I was, it really, I feel so lucky that at Zwift they do recognize the value of my perspective as an athlete, my perspective as a woman, my perspective as somebody that just loves the sport and wants to share it with more people. And we all know now that having more diverse perspectives on in your leadership, in
Yeah.
your strategy, is so important to creating the future of cycling that we all want to be a part of. Something that is inclusive, accessible, that goes beyond the sort of confined thinking of cycling in the past, of the sort of one model of doing it. And now we have so many new people
Yeah.
coming into the sport, especially we all saw over the pandemic. So many new people got on bikes and they have different needs. And there's not just one way to enjoy it. There's a lot of room in the sport for people to kind of find their joy, find their challenge. So with more diversity within the cycling industry, we're going to be able to cater to that future of the industry that is much wider, much more exciting, much more diverse
Exactly. Yeah.
in terms of
Hmm.
the riders that we are inviting in and supporting and representing. So it's been a wonderful program
Yeah.
to be a part of.
Mm. Mm. Well, and I look forward to seeing it grow as well. I mean, it's sometimes, well, not sometimes, well, perhaps I don't want to generalize it, but the importance of a mentor is not to be dismissed, and especially a mentor that can recognize the challenges and the difficulties of
Yes.
coming through the career as a woman in the cycling industry, and giving that perspective. It's so important because you can point to uh, potential problems that might arise, and you help
Yes.
them overcome and kind of perhaps smooth the path. And
Yes.
with that, obviously, you are making it more welcoming as well for people that might have, women that might not see it as a potential for a career to come into
Hmm.
the industry and help it grow and flourish as well.
Hmm.
So I've known about Uplift program, and I've hugely value its relevance and importance for the industry at large.
Yes.
And well, and kind of what will as well for obviously the consumers, the sport in
Hmm.
general. The kind of it's we have spoken quite at length about the different aspects of grassroots sport, elite sport, women being represented in the sport in general, women coming into a career in cycling industry. Yeah, we could have carry on talking about much more, but I wanted to kind of try to perhaps bring this to a focal point of the podcasts, which is, what does success look like for you? And I think this is quite a good question to ask from all the nuggets of information that people listening to will have been taking from this conversation.
Yes. Success looks like a Netflix documentary on the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. No, but truly, I, more people just discovering how thrilling women's racing is, more women feeling invited into the sport, that seeing themselves in the sport or feeling well supported or represented in the sport. There's so many different ways that we can create opportunity in this sport, and to see so many more brands and investors kind of recognizing those opportunities and seizing them is very exciting to me. There's so much more
Yeah.
attention being paid to the women's side of the sport right now. So to me, the next success is, more support for development teams, more support for UCI teams, minimum salaries across UCI as well as World Tour Pro, which we achieved a few years ago. But there's still a couple big steps that need to be made to ensure that all those women racing the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift are making real salaries and not having to work on the side and can be truly professional. Yeah. So I think that, success just looks like the race continuing to grow in a sustainable way and to become, one of the premier sporting events every year, not just in cycling, but sporting events. The Tour de France is absolutely iconic and can draw so many new fans to the sport. And I think that, as we've discussed, the women's side of things has an opportunity to really connect with audiences in new ways. And I get so excited about that. And I challenge everybody to tune in and watch the Femme, whether it be at Paris-Roubaix, Femmes avec Zwift on April 6th, which is going to be very exciting, or the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this summer, August 12th to the 18th. Tune in for one stage, start to follow the riders on social, see what's happening on the women's side of the sport right now. There's so many very exciting personalities. The talent is getting so much deeper. We have new breakthrough performances all the time. There's going to be a lot of pressure on SD Works this year. I'm excited to see different teams like Canyon SRAM Racing really challenge them at the biggest races. So there's some really good rivalries happening now, and the conversation around the sport is just getting richer and more exciting. So that I just want to continue to see that increased visibility and more people experiencing, the joy of watching women's racing.
Very good. With that said, we will work towards seeing that being realized, which is already being done, which is already happening, but will continue to grow.
Exactly.
I wanted to pick on the viewership, and you mentioning about the premier event, not just woman, but in sport. And through reading your report of 2022 of the impact of Zwift, it was mentioned that Zwift had ranked top 3 in viewership across people watching TV. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I read from the report during that time. So that already speaks volumes
Huge.
about the work that you have been doing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with that, I wanted to bring to my last question, which is a tradition that I started on the podcast. That is, every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is the following. I have to read it. What do you think is the most important change to enable cycling to be more gender balanced?
It starts with investment. It really does, because with that investment comes more visibility, which comes with higher valuation, which then attracts more investment. So I think that that's what's really going to unlock opportunities for riders to get into the sport, for women to pursue their dreams of becoming pros, and to be able to command the salaries because they have the audience.
Exactly.
So I think that's truly the biggest thing, is that we need, to continue to invest in the sport. And I can tell you, as an investor, it's a great investment in women's sports in general right now. And in cycling, we're seeing tremendous growth in the visibility of the riders and the races and the teams. So it's a great space to invest in right now.
Very, very good. A call to action for brands listening. This is where you need to be putting your money.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing that. That's very important to be mentioned. Now is your turn to put someone else in the spot. What question will you like to leave to my next guest?
All right. I would say perhaps, what is one of the most exciting new opportunities in cycling right now, for people first getting into the sport? What's out there for them? What is some new spaces or new events that are making cycling more inclusive and accessible?
Very good question. Very good question. Thanks for sharing, Kate. Has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot through our conversation, through the insights that you shared, and I do hope that people have been listening to our conversation and will also have a very positive experience of also going watch women cycling and learn from what you have had to share with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
I feel so lucky to be in this position, and I just want more people to experience the joy of riding bikes, the joy of watching women's racing, and I thank you so much for taking the time to really delve into these topics. It's a lot of fun.
Wow, what an amazing conversation. Kate's story is not just about cycling. It's a testament to the impact one individual can have on reshaping the entire sport for the better. Before you go, remember that Paris-Roubaix Femmes, avec Zwift on the 6th of April is just around the corner. Support the women's cycling, watch the Femmes. Also, make sure to tune in to next week's podcast where Kate's question will be answered by my next guest. Remember to subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for listening.